Here we are at the SDG Media Zone, Cannes Lions, at the Goal House with SAP. Cannot wait to introduce you to my two guests here today. So please, ladies, introduce yourself and share with our audience who you are, what you are doing, and what brings you here today.
Hi, Kerry. Thank you for having us. So my name is Eilean from Lautz-Cauzanet. I'm the co-founder of VEPSI. VEPSI is a sustainable marketplace with an in-house impact influencer program. So our goal is to put sustainable brands like Jennifer on center stage, basically, so selling them, but also promoting them with a network of sustainable influencers worldwide.
Hi, Kerry. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. So my name is Jennifer Ewah. I'm founder and creative director of Diodati. Diodati is a socially sustainable jewellery brand, a luxury jewellery brand that produces jewellery with a social cooperative of women who survived the genocide in Rwanda. There are 5,000 women in our partner social cooperative spread across the country in 52 savings groups. Our raison d'etre is ostensibly to impact the lives of formerly marginalised women, artisans who are not to be characterised as beneficiaries of charity. Notwithstanding that they survived a genocide, but rather are artisanal women of excellence, and that's how we see them.
So I'd love to hear from you both your thoughts on the creative economy in Africa as a tool for economic transformation.
Well, so the creative economy in Africa has often been characterised by its informality, and artisans are creating businesses which are not transacted in a way that is highly sort of formalized, or indeed are not capitalizing on what one would describe as the systems around brands per se. The informal sector of artisan craft in Africa has existed for millennia. I think that the transformation will come through, and if I can speak in sort of generic terms, I think the transformation will come through some of the talented, gifted people and small, informal artisan craftspeople being able to translate their enterprises through microfinance, through other initiatives that help people who are starting out into things that have longevity, de-risking their businesses, because the creative sector in Africa is actually a mainstay of local economies. So I think we need to have some intervention in terms of how informal it is, translating it into the formal, and in some cases creating real recognizable brands. And you see this with some people who are participating on the global stage as African designers. But for the vast majority, it's being able to just get the support to be able to move forward and to de-risk some of the challenges that they face, which are infrastructure-based.
I fully agree, and I think, of course, if you see, you look at specifically at the fashion industry as part of the creative economy, there's a huge demand now for African fashion designers, and at the same time, there's a huge demand for more sustainability, more transparency, which is great because it means that there is also a demand for change in the African economy. And yeah, I think it's a huge chance for a lot of African designers and countries, because governments and the private sector all now start to come together, and they know they have right now to change things to support these designers, because this is what people want to buy, and in the end that's demand drives change.
What does women empowerment look like within the context of African artisanal craft heritage to you both?
Yeah, women empowerment for me, mainly in fashion, is about giving more rights to women who work in the fashion industry, but also providing them with adequate and more training, because that's one of the really the weak points in the African industry, in the African fashion industry. So, which is basically also, when you look at sustainable brands in the African countries, it's one of the first priorities they look at, and I think it's one of the things that you really, when you have to really do more, because as we said later in another panel I attended, if you change a woman's life, you change a whole village, the impact is huge. So for me it goes really through training
And on that point, actually, for viewers that are not aware of that, is there any statistics you can share or any examples or insight when you say that, you know, if you can educate or encourage or empower a woman, they then go on to help their families and their whole community. Is there anything that either of you can share?
Well, I mean, in terms of women being custodians, I think one of the things that is sort of fascinating to me is this universality of the concept of women empowerment. It's said that if women were sort of paid equally, it would provide, so it's not a zero-sum game against men, of course. No one wants that. That is not what gender equality is about. If women were paid equally to men within the same jobs, it would provide something like 121 trillion to the global economy, which is an astonishing amount of kind of a boost that's needed to global doldrums in our world economy. So women empowerment has a universal concept underlying it, and that is that women generally tend to be custodian of children. And they tend to be good custodians of children relative to their male counterparts. Now, I'm not disparaging fathers, of course not. What I am saying is that women who are tasked with the job of looking after children in communities in Africa are often doing a very good job at that. So also there are statistics that show that when amenities are put in place in communities such as wells, which are much needed for drinking water and to eliminate women and girls having to walk for miles to fetch water, thus diminishing their ability to get an education.
Right.
Those women look after those wells and those amenities incredibly well. So women in positions of leadership are often, sorry Eilean, are often doing great things for communities in Africa. But it's right across the board. So what does women empowerment look like? Women empowerment looks like being able to enable women who are already good custodians over amenities, over funds, who show initiative over their desire to become entrepreneurs. It is facilitating their dreams, which are often associated with seeing their children grow healthy, happy, well-educated. But none of that is to say that there are not men who absolutely want the same. It's just women are showing themselves and proving themselves in that regard.
It's very true, they're actioning all of those points when they're giving the opportunity in the chats. So I want to switch over a second here. Let's talk about what's the importance of the luxury sector into all of this framework.
Do you want to answer? So the luxury framework is extremely important in my mind, because luxury is the sort of the pinnacle, right? Luxury is the cachet. Luxury is what we should be aiming for. And we've all spent a lot of time listening to people talking here about purpose-driven brands being the gold standard. If that is the case, then it's the synergy between the gold standard in terms of purpose and meaningfulness and sort of depth alongside the gold standard in terms of product. So it's that synergy. What does it also mean for African producers, African artisan producers? I think if we are in a position where there is appropriate segmentation, in other words, we have things which are entry level, we have things which are high end, that is the way things are in terms of the fashion industry, the creative industries in the West, or in the North, or the global North. It should be the same to be said, of the global South, and African producers should be making things which are entry level and also high end. The reason for that is artisanal craft is associated with slowness in fashion. It's the antithesis of mass manufacture, but also it's seen to be the pinnacle of beauty. So for Africa to be excluded from that for any reason is only going to perpetuate negative paradigms, both socio-economic and creative.
Thank you. I want to switch over now. Eilean, you are really leading the charge, especially in Europe, with what is going on and the power of influencers for good. You know, we all hear about content creators, we hear about these influencers and what they can do, and now with VEPSI, you're actually giving them guidance, you're giving them a hub, and you're creating connections to change-making brands, and brands being able to connect with innovating people that can spread their story. Talk about the role that these influencers play, especially the power that they can give to other markets outside of the typical fashion markets that too many people are now used to. Let's talk about the role that influencers can give to developing countries and what you see how that works out.
Yeah, totally. I think the key word you just said is connecting. So it's something quite new. 10 years ago, you would not have had the possibility to be on social media and talk in one sentence about poverty reduction, on climate crisis and change, and about a beautiful dress. So there's something, a totally new narrative now, how we talk about sustainable development and other issues that are related to it. So influencers are actually, they have multiple hats, so meaning that they can of course promote a brand, they can make publicity, something maybe that was their initial role, but progressively they transform to something that we call the change makers, ambassadors of impact. And they have an incredible power because they can make messages which maybe were difficult to hear or even to accept audible, because they mastered the marketing codes actually, and they mastered communications that reached now the masses. So sustainable development, I think 15 years ago, was still, I wouldn't say a leap thing, but it was difficult to understand by the masses. And now these mostly women, but they're also men, they do so much more than just taking selfies. You know, they convey messages, and the powerful thing is there are no distance anymore, in the sense that we work with sustainable influencers who explain what is happening or what happened in the past in Rwanda and how it impacts still all these years later on the daily lives of people. And they bring that to a little German town and make people realize that we're all connected, and it may sound cheesy, but we are, and that the choices somebody makes by buying something will have an impact on maybe on the other side of the world. So the role is that, yeah, they have a global role, and they have a role of connecting not only brands and consumers, which is already very powerful because, as we said, demand drives change, but also they start to connect sectors who were not talking to each other. Like, we bring them to events with the UN, we bring them also to events with the private sector. I don't like the word using, but we put them in a position where they are bridges between different sectors. So this is, I think we're just at the beginning of something really, really big here.
And talking of new beginnings, you have some exciting news that is coming up with the VEPSI marketplace. And the reason that I want to just touch on that is because we know that people are creating stories. We know that people are looking to bring awareness to amazing brands, where Jennifer is leading the charge and really inspiring change and changing people's lives. And together it's a very powerful partnership. But once people see these, seeing isn't enough anymore. If we are going to achieve the United Nations 2030 agenda and achieve all of these phenomenal goals, but they're ambitious, right? And it's going to take all of us. So the storytelling is wonderful, the connecting is wonderful, but what I'm thrilled to hear about your next steps is you're actually now going to launch a marketplace where people can purchase. They can vote with their wallets. They can purchase what their purpose is, and they can shop their values. Please share more about that with us.
Yeah, exactly. So we're very excited because we're like a couple of days away from launching this marketplace.
Oh, congratulations. I didn't know that soon. Congratulations.
Thank you, yeah. And what we want to do with this marketplace is, of course, yeah, connect brands to influencers and shoppers, but we want to create a new way of consumerism. Like, we call it the Act Like a Hero experience, because what we want is that people not only know that these brands exist, but they also know that each brand, actually buying each brand, has a concrete impact. So it's about informing about each commitment that this brand has. And what we concretely do for the brands also is that, for example, we know that in developing countries there are a lot of extremely talented designers, and if you want to support the change in the industry, you want to support the sustainable industry, you have to help them sell more. It's as easy as that. You have to help them to come to Europe. And so we developed a marketplace that is especially designed so that we can bring these countries, these designers from these countries to Europe with a model that allows us to sell them without taxes, with low shipping fees, with eco-friendly shipping to Europe, all these ones. And the consumer is aware in the moment it happens, in the moment the purchase happens, he or she is aware of that. And in the end also, we want to have a marketplace where purchasing is learning something, or we are in an educating position, because not only the brand will educate the consumer, but also in the end, we have the influencers telling the story about the impact. And last but not least, we also have this circular approach, because when you talk about the SDGs, you can't not talk about this, the circularity of the need of more circularity. In the end, we have a donation system. We include in every purchase a donation to a very concrete education project that we manage with an NGO partner. So somebody who goes shopping through VEPSI Marketplace knows that she or he really makes an impact and learns
on several levels.
Yeah, on several levels. Actually, we really had this bucket list of impacts we want to achieve for the brands, for the consumers, for the influencers, and for people who are not related at all to fashion. So, for example, a school kid. And if you don't educate children, well, then we won't have a sustainable fashion industry.
Exactly. And I just wanted to know, Jennifer, do you have any success stories that you've had where you've seen the power of content creators or influencers being able to share the stories of the women that you have mentioned, to take it out of those villages and actually as a global message? Is there anything there you can share with us that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, influencers and celebrities, I have to say, who are influencers too, who have worn my pieces in the past, you see a massive uptake in interest and so on and so forth, and that's tangible. And I think that's something that we have to acknowledge, that as much as my purpose on a personal level is to impact the lives of women who suffered and to impact their lives demonstrably so that they are in a better position in their lives, not just in terms of revenue, but also in terms of their dignity. Because I do not believe it is fair or just that they have to live in a situation where they can be characterized as beneficiaries of charity, notwithstanding that they can bead and weave with talent that deserves to be in a museum, talent that deserves to be in design and Daba. So for me, that's a justice issue in a way, and why should any of us not want to partake in consumption that enables people to live better lives as people who produced the things that we wear? So for example, Nicole Scherzinger wearing my pieces, people see her and it takes the message of a supply chain that impacts Rwandan women in a social cooperative, Hutu and Tutsi working side by side, but they see the glamour, they see the ostensible hopeful beauty behind the products, they see her as an advocate, and so there's this wonderful synergy. So influencers are very important, and this is what Eilean and her team have realized and are catalyzing strategically. Influencers are deeply important socially, not just in terms of social media. So those are some examples. But I think that it's also interesting to think about people who are advocates without necessarily being celebrities and endorsers or social media influencers. Because I would be as interested in, say, the new Chief Justice of Ethiopia, the first woman who has been in that position.
I think the influencer descriptive now, though, has changed, right?
Yes.
It is your policymakers, world
Yes.
leaders,
Yes.
activists and advocates within their own right. It's who inspires you, who
Yes.
is the leader,
Yes.
what's going on, even community leaders.
Yeah.
And so, but no, thank you for sharing that, because I think for so many people, they're still trying to understand, what does this look like? How is the power of marketing and branding, something that is so simple in some lives and careers and communities, literally changing somebody else's at the other side of the world?
And what's interesting for me is that you can actually introduce a paradigm shift through your choice of influencer. Because I made a conscious decision to photograph some of the women in the cooperative as models. And it sounds a very small, insignificant thing, but they were recognized as so beautiful that, and I don't just mean that in a cosmetic way, I mean that in terms of their grace, I mean that in terms of their way of carrying themselves, notwithstanding what they've been through and the atrocities. They were recognized in that light such that people saw our brand differently. Equally, let's not forget that not all brands are just about whether they're of African origin or French or Italian or European. Not all brands are just distributed to Western Europe or the US. So what we mean by influencers should be, if you have purpose, you should have purpose across every metric, every aspect of your business. And my purpose is not just to partner with celebrities and social media influencers. My purpose is to change the way that people think about producers within the context of the goods that they buy, such that they are given adequate status that they deserve as human beings with dignity. So if that means I afford one of my artisan ladies the luxury of hair and makeup or nothing, beautiful as she is, she deserves the treatment of a woman on the Upper East Side, and that's part of my message, equality.
Exactly, I was just about to say that, and I think that's fantastic. Now, it's all driving a lot of optimism, what we're seeing happening in the fashion sector, for impact, conscious fashion, sustainability, from the planet to the people. It's phenomenal what's going on. But the reality is there's still a long way to go to achieve the SDGs to the 2030 agenda. Can you both share some insights of what you think needs to happen or what you would like to see happen individually in each of your sectors?
So clearly, I think social media there's a huge power in using social media, but they won't save the world, and they can help achieve the SDGs, but it's not the solution. We need concrete solutions. We need more regulations on a policy level, on industry changes, and we need money. We need money to go there where it will really make a difference. We need more lobbying for sustainable brands, meaning more support for sustainable, for example, to bring them to Europe more easily, or to bring them to where the consumers are, and they're not only in Europe but everywhere. So we need also like a real overhaul of the whole supply chain, and we need laws and hardcore things, and not only discussions. I mean, discussions is great, but collaboration is better, and concrete actions is what we need. So there is unfortunately not. We need more actions, more concrete actions.
Jazz, have you got anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think
You did hit an amazing checklist.
Oh, absolutely, because to be honest with you, we've got a challenge ahead. I think that alongside all of the things that Eilean mentioned, I think that we need a shift in consciousness around our priorities. Because if we really claim, I don't have children yet, but if we claim to love our children, we want to see them inherit a better world. And so that means that you're conscious. You're conscious that your child might fall down, hurt themselves, so you ensure that they don't fall into potholes. And we're not doing the same thing with our world, environmentally or socially. So I think that overarching everything is that we need to resist the human the human imperative to not be altruistic, to not do the right thing. And those are big things, but these are big things. And these are big things, big goals that we need to work together on a unified level. Self-interest is the opposite of unity. Unity is the opposite of unity is the opposite of selfishness, and you can't have a movement for good if there is too much disunity or selfishness involved in your decision making. So those are the only things I would add, because I think human psychology is what is meaning or making us run behind our objectives on this roadmap.
Especially on the masses.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to target. So thank you so much both for being here. I would love for you to be able to share where can our audience find out what's going on, where can we follow you, and maybe a call to action of a website where people can visit and see what's going on to support both of your work.
So I am available to, well, you can see my pieces at www.diodati.com. And we're crowdfunding very soon, shortly. Soon on VEPSI, very excited about that, and the amazing platform that Eilean has curated and created.
Same. So you can find us on, of course, very soon on our marketplace. So you just VEPSI, VEPSI. And I also would like to formulate a call for sustainable brands. Please apply, join us. If you're a sustainable influencer or you're not a sustainable influencer, you just want to use your voice on social media, join us and join the program because we need you. And consumers, come, start voting with your dollars because you make the change.